Lumbering, mining, and the railway, fishing, and the area's unique beauty initially brought settlers to La Cloche in the early 1900s.
And their lives were captured on film for future generations. Their way of life, their entertainment, their happiness, and their love of the La Cloche area is seen through these captivating black and white images that have survived the test of time. Kerry and Jon Butler have been researching the history of La Cloche since the 1980s, and they've been documenting the pictorial history through images generously shared by ancestors of the early visitors.
These photographs in no way capture the complete history of La Cloche. However, a snapshot of this area can be enjoyed through the photographs and historical documents. Thank you to the people who have taken special care of their family's treasures and have been kind enough to share with all of us.
Artillery shells.
Yeah, it was an army tube that they put the tripod in. It was like, and it's about this tall. So when it came to the post office was like, wow, what are you ordering?
Yeah.
What is this?
A Katusha.
I said, oh, it's just a camera. Don't worry. Yeah.
Wow.
But still works perfect, and it is. It's a good one. And just get the one.
What do you use for filming that? Like, what is you just put
It's 4x5. Yeah, the sheet film goes in the back
film,
here.
yeah.
There we go.
Wow.
So just get it focused.
What drew us to La Cloche was the difference from where we lived in Northern Ontario. I grew up in Kirkland Lake, Ontario, and I thought that was the lakes and the trees that were part of the Canadian Shield. Then when we found out that there was a Grace Lake that the group of 7 had painted many times and gone to, we decided to find out just where this Grace Lake was in Algoma. Well, it turned out that it was right here in Willisville, that Franklin Carmichael had spent a lot of years and had brought other painters with him. And we realized just why he decided to come here, because it was so different, so unexpected from the Canadian Shield that we had grown up in. The Quartzsite Hills, that were really rather mountainous, so calling them the Cloche Mountains, although they're modest mountains, they certainly are mountains that are much higher and definitely more exciting to give you the views of what's around, and you can see so far, and that's pretty well what drew us here.
We started coming to the La Cloche area in the early 80s, and at first we were just visitors, and we canoed the area into Clarny Park, going to Nellie Lake, Grace Lake, Murray Lake. And around that time I was working in Elliott Lake, and I happened upon A.J. Casson, who was a surviving member of the group of 7, and I contacted him, and he said, drop in anytime you're in Toronto. So I started visiting Mr. Casson in the early 80s, and he started talking about this area and the beauty of the area. So we had started exploring, but with him talking about how beautiful it was, and how if he could paint to the north again he would love to come here, we started spending more time in the La Cloche range, around Grace Lake, around Nellie Lake, and that really got us inspired to learn more about the group of 7, what they did in this area, where their painting spots were. And then in later years we met Jim and Sue Waddington, the authors of Following in the Footsteps of the Group of 7, and they had been basically researching the Group of 7 sites in the area since the 70s. We actually met them up on Willisville Mountain a number of years ago, probably 15 now. They were regular visitors to the Clarny area, searching out sites for the Group of 7. And on one of their many trips in the area, a favorite place they went to was Carmichael's Rock, which is located on Grace Lake. And this is where the famous photograph was taken by Jocan Gauthier of Carmichael sitting on the rock with his hood on and sketching the notch going into Nellie Lake. They'd been there a number of years, probably over 30 years they'd been visiting the area. And they showed up one day and here the rock was missing. They came back after that trip and they told us that they'd been up to the rock and unfortunately it was gone. So a year later, they were back again and we all headed up and were looking for Carmichael's rock. And sure enough, we found it at the bottom of about a 200-foot embankment in perfect condition. It had landed in the moss and wasn't damaged at all. Easy to find because it was the white quartzite in the middle of the moss. So the following year, which is 2 years after they discovered that it was missing, we put together a group of 8 people. It was international. We had 4 Canadians and 4 Americans, and we went up there with our woods packs and put the rock back in place.
Franklin Carmichael also did another sketch, and this sketch shows the straight across, and it's actually the view from our home. It was more than interesting for us because we had been told that there was a kinsman camp right across the bay here, but those cabins are long gone.
So I guess the Rockwood cabin on Charlton Lake is the oldest cabin that's still in pristine condition. Everything's exactly the way it was when it was built in 1927.
That's right. It's an exceptional cabin just because it's a cabin that you'd like to spend time in, but it's just so gracious, spacious, and beautiful to sit and take in the view of Charlton Lake.
So his grandmother, the lady whose place this was, she was about 5'2". That's why
Everything's kind of not too tall.
It's wonderful that it's still standing. Like I love
Oh, it's incredible.
the work on the ceilings, like
And the logs,
They're,
like they're, you know,
they're in excellent shape.
yeah.
So the Rockwood family built it, and it's now the 3rd generation.
Correct.
And they have come just about every year since 1927 and kept the cabin up, and it's in perfect shape, log throughout, hardwood floors, and a beautiful piece of 1920s architecture for Northern Ontario. Yeah, we had a lot of photographs in the exhibit from Charlton Lake days, and quite a few of them were from the Rockwood family of the days in the 30s when they were sailing and swimming and climbing the mountains and really enjoying the area.
It certainly was the time, the 30s, when they consolidated their feelings of wanting to spend time here in La Cloche, and I'm sure that that's where the grandchildren and their descendants are now spending time here as well.
Yeah, because now when the great-grandchildren come, they come up from Colorado, and the 1 or 2 weeks that they're here, they're out on Grace Lake, they're climbing the mountain, they're water skiing, they're boarding, they're doing everything they possibly can to have a great time at the cottage.
Mm-hmm. Living the La Cloche life.
One of Carmichael's shows in the McMichael Gallery was called Light and Shadow. And light and shadow really is what is different about the La Cloche area and these white quartzite mountains. The light is reflected in different ways. The shadows from the mountains are it's different all the time. It's really what draws photographers and artists to this day to the La Cloche area. And I am sure over the course of a year there are hundreds of different people that photograph or paint or sketch the area. Kerry and I, we both amateur photographers, and we took photos early in our lives, then ended up taking an awful lot of photos of our children. And then when we retired to the Cloche area, we were in a perfect spot to just capture the landscape, and it's beautiful. We're both originally film photographers, analog, did that for years, and then gradually moved over to digital. And when we went to digital, we stayed away from any type of computer manipulation or enhancement or anything like that whatsoever. So even though we use digital photography, the colors are natural. There's no sprucing up or cleaning up or anything like that. And it's that light that we find really reacts with people.
Of course, the road wasn't there when they first came. The little swing of the railway track here, we call it the horseshoe.
This is where we come in the mornings, spring and fall, and get the early morning photos just as before the sun comes over the horizon. September 15th is a great day, as well as being my mother's birthday. It's the day the sun comes up directly in the notch.